The sound of hoofbeats against frozen ground echoed through the canyon as Liam Xander drove his cattle toward the winter pasture, unaware that 50 miles away, a woman he had never met was about to lose everything she loved on the most sacred night of the year. Katherine Daniels stood in the parlor of her family's ranch house, her hands trembling as she read the notice for the third time, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less devastating. Behind her, the fire crackled in the hearth, and the scent of pine from the small Christmas tree she had decorated just yesterday filled the room with a cruel mockery of holiday cheer. The paper in her hands was official, stamped with the seal of Elko First National Bank, and dated December 24th, 1876. She had until 6 o'clock that evening to produce $2,000, or the bank would seize the property that had been in her family for 12 years. "Katie, what are we going to do?" Her younger brother Thomas stood in the doorway, his 18-year-old face drawn with worry. He was supposed to be celebrating his recent birthday, not watching their world collapse around them. "I do not know," Katherine whispered, sinking into her father's old chair. Their father had died just 8 months ago, thrown from a spooked horse during a thunderstorm. Her mother had followed him to the grave within 3 months, her heart simply giving out from grief. At 23, Katherine had found herself responsible not only for Thomas, but for the 200-acre ranch outside Elko, Nevada, with its modest herd of cattle, and the mortgage her father had taken out to expand their operations. She had managed to scrape together enough for the payments through spring and summer, selling off cattle and taking in sewing work from the town ladies. But autumn had brought an early frost that killed half their hay crop, and then rustlers had stolen 15 head of cattle in October. She had gone to the bank in November, hat in hand, asking for an extension. The bank manager, a thin man named Cornelius Pettigrew with oiled hair and cold eyes, had smiled at her in a way that made her skin crawl. "Perhaps we could come to an arrangement," he had suggested, his gaze traveling over her in a manner that made his meaning clear. Katherine had walked out without another word, her cheeks burning with humiliation and rage. She would lose everything before she sold herself to that vile man. But now, standing in her parlor on Christmas Eve with the foreclosure notice in her hands, she wondered if her pride had doomed them both. "I could ride into town, ask if anyone might lend us the money," Thomas offered, though they both knew it was hopeless. They had no collateral left, no wealthy relatives, no mysterious benefactor waiting in the wings. In this weather, Katherine looked out the window at the gray December sky. Snow had been threatening all morning and the temperature was dropping fast. "No, I will go myself. Maybe I can reason with Pettigrew, ask him to wait until after the new year." She knew it was futile even as she said it, but what else could she do? Sit here and wait for the bank to take everything her parents had worked for. Her mother's china, her father's books, the quilt her grandmother had stitched by hand. The land itself, which held their graves in the small family cemetery on the eastern hill. Katherine changed into her warmest traveling dress, a deep green wool that had been her mother's, and wrapped herself in a heavy cloak. She pinned her dark blonde hair up tightly and set her hat firmly on her head. Thomas brought the wagon around, but she shook her head. "I will take Rosie. Faster that way, and if the snow starts, she will get me home better than the wagon." Rosie was her mare, a steady sorrel with a gentle disposition and sure feet. The ride into Elko took nearly an hour, and by the time Katherine reached the main street, fat snowflakes had begun to drift down from the leaden sky. The town was quiet, most people already home with their families preparing for Christmas dinner. Warm light glowed from windows, and she could hear singing from the church at the end of the street. The contrast between that peaceful scene and the desperation clawing at her chest was almost unbearable. The bank was still open, as she had known it would be. Pettigrew had made sure of that, wanting to be there when she came crawling back. She tied Rosie to the hitching post and squared her shoulders before pushing through the heavy door. Pettigrew sat behind his massive oak desk, and he was not alone. Two men stood near the door, tough-looking characters she recognized as ranch hands from the Pettigrew spread. The banker's father owned a large cattle operation north of town, and Cornelius had the backing of family money, which he wielded like a weapon against those less fortunate. "Miss Daniels," Pettigrew said, rising with that same oily smile, "I have been expecting you. Have you brought the payment?" "You know I have not," Katherine said, willing her voice to remain steady. "I came to ask for more time, just until spring. I can sell the cattle then, pay you everything I owe plus interest. Spring is 4 months away," Pettigrew said, walking around the desk. He moved too close and she forced herself not to step back. "A lot can happen in 4 months. Cattle die, prices fall. No, I think not." "Please," Katherine hated the word, hated the begging in her own voice, but she had no choice. "It is Christmas Eve. Have some mercy." "Mercy?" Pettigrew laughed. "This is business, Miss Daniels. Your father understood that. He signed the note, agreed to the terms. It is not my fault if you cannot meet your obligations. My father made that agreement in good faith, and he kept his word until the day he died. I have tried to do the same, but this year has been impossible. You know what happened. Everyone in town knows." "The frost, the rustlers, excuses," Pettigrew interrupted. "Everyone faces hardships. That is the nature of ranching. Some people are suited to it and some are not. Perhaps you should consider that ranching is not women's work." Rage flared hot in Katherine's chest, burning away her fear. "My mother ran that ranch alongside my father for 12 years. I learned from the best. I can make it work if you just give me time." "Or," Pettigrew said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate, "you could consider my previous offer. Become Mrs. Pettigrew and all your financial worries disappear. I would be generous. Your brother could stay on the ranch, of course. It would all work out quite nicely." Katherine looked into his pale eyes and saw nothing there but possessive greed. He did not want her. He wanted to own her, to add her to his collection of acquisitions. He wanted the satisfaction of breaking her pride. "I would rather live in a ditch," she said clearly. Pettigrew's face darkened. "Then that is exactly where you will be. The foreclosure stands. You have until 6 o'clock to vacate the premises, or I will have the sheriff remove you forcibly. Good day, Miss Daniels." Katherine turned and walked out, her head high despite the tears burning in her eyes. She would not let him see her cry. She untied Rosie and was about to mount when a commotion down the street caught her attention. A group of cowboys had just ridden into town, their horses steaming in the cold air. They looked trail-worn and weary, their coats covered in dust, and their faces shadowed with several days' worth of beard. The man in the lead sat tall in his saddle, and even at a distance, Katherine could see the quiet authority in the way he carried himself. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with dark hair visible beneath his worn hat and a strong jaw. As the group passed the bank, his eyes met hers for just a moment, and something in that brief connection made her breath catch. Then they were past, heading toward the saloon, and Katherine shook herself. She had more pressing concerns than a handsome stranger. She mounted Rosie and turned toward home, her mind racing. What would she tell Thomas? Where would they go? She had a little money saved, maybe enough to rent a room in town for a few weeks while she looked for work. But then what? The snow was falling harder now, and the wind had picked up, driving the flakes into her face. Katherine bent low over Rosie's neck, letting the mare find her way. They were about 3 miles out of town when she heard hoofbeats behind her. She glanced back and saw a single rider approaching fast. Her heart hammered, wondering if Pettigrew had sent one of his men after her. But as the rider drew closer, she recognized him as the man from the street, the one who had looked at her. He pulled his horse alongside hers, and she saw that he was even more striking up close, with gray-green eyes that held both intelligence and kindness. "Madam," he called over the wind, "you should not be out in this alone. Storm is getting bad fast." "I have no choice," Katherine called back. "I live 7 miles from town." He frowned, looking at the darkening sky. "Let me ride with you at least. Not safe to be out here alone." Katherine wanted to refuse, to tell him she could manage on her own as she had managed everything else since her parents died. But the wind chose that moment to gust so hard it nearly took her hat, and she realized he was right. This was shaping up to be a serious storm. "All right," she agreed. "Thank you." They rode in silence for a while, both bent against the wind. The snow was coming down so thick now that Katherine could barely see 20 feet ahead. She knew this road by heart, though, had ridden it hundreds of times. Rosie knew it too, and the mare pressed on steadily. "Name is Liam Xander," the man called after a while. "From down south near Carson City originally. Been trailing cattle up north, heading back now." "Katherine Daniels," she responded. "My family's ranch is just ahead." "You look troubled, if you do not mind my saying so," Liam said. "Saw you coming out of the bank." "Bad news." Katherine did not know why she told him. Maybe it was because he was a stranger and would be gone tomorrow, or maybe it was because she was so tired of carrying the weight alone. Whatever the reason, the words spilled out. She told him about her parents, about the ranch, about the mortgage and the foreclosure. She told him about Pettigrew and his vile offer, about having until 6 o'clock to produce money she did not have. Liam listened without interrupting, and when she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. $2,000, he finally asked. "Yes. I know it is a fortune. I know there is no way to get it." Katherine's voice was bitter. "I will pack what I can carry tonight and find somewhere in town to stay, at least until I can figure out what comes next." "That Pettigrew," Liam said slowly. "He is the thin fellow with the oily hair. Looked like he enjoyed being cruel, despite everything." Katherine almost smiled. "That describes him perfectly." "Saw men like that before," Liam said. "They think power gives them the right to do whatever they want. Think they can take anything they fancy." They had reached the turnoff to the Daniels ranch, and Katherine guided Rosie up the familiar drive. The house appeared through the snow, smoke rising from the chimney where Thomas had kept the fire going. It looked warm and solid and safe, and Katherine's heart broke at the thought of leaving it. "Come inside," she heard herself say. "Warm up before you head back to town. It is the least I can do for the escort." Liam hesitated, then nodded. "Appreciate that, madam." Thomas met them at the door, his eyes questioning. Katherine made brief introductions while Liam tended to both horses in the barn, refusing Thomas's help. When he came back inside, stamping snow from his boots, Katherine had coffee brewing and was laying out cold chicken and bread. "It is not much, but you are welcome to it," she said. "More than enough," Liam assured her, settling at the table. "Beats what I have been eating on the trail." They ate mostly in silence, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. There was something restful about Liam's presence, Katherine thought. He did not fill the air with meaningless chatter or ask invasive questions. He simply ate his meal with the appreciation of a man who had worked hard and was genuinely hungry. After they finished, Liam stood and looked out the window. "Snow is letting up some," he observed. "I should head back to town before it starts again." Katherine walked him to the door, and Thomas went out to help him saddle his horse. On the porch, Liam turned to her. "This Pettigrew," he said. "He will be at the bank until 6. He said he would be there to watch me fail," Katherine said bitterly. Something flickered in Liam's eyes, but he only nodded. "I am sorry for your troubles, Miss Daniels, truly." "Thank you for seeing me home safely," Katherine said, "and for listening." It helped, somehow, saying it all out loud to someone. Liam tipped his hat and swung into his saddle. Katherine watched him ride away until he disappeared into the swirling snow, then went back inside to face the grim task of deciding what to pack and what to leave behind. The next hour passed in a blur of painful decisions. Her mother's wedding china or her father's books, the family Bible or her grandmother's quilt. Thomas worked silently beside her, wrapping items in newspapers and packing them into crates. Neither of them spoke much. What was there to say? At 5:30, as the winter sun sank toward the horizon and the light began to fail, hoofbeats sounded outside again. Katherine's stomach clenched, thinking Pettigrew had sent men early to throw them out. But when she looked out the window, she saw Liam Xander dismounting. She opened the door, confused. "Mr. Xander, did you forget something?" "No, madam," Liam said, and there was something different about him now, a kind of quiet determination in his face. "But I have been thinking on your situation, been thinking hard, and I have a proposition for you." Katherine's heart sank. Not him too, not this man who had seemed kind and decent. "If you are about to suggest what I think you are, nothing dishonorable," Liam interrupted quickly. "Just hear me out, please." Something in his tone made her step back and let him in. Thomas came to stand beside her, protective despite his youth. Liam took off his hat and turned it in his hands, suddenly looking nervous. "I have been trailing cattle for 5 years now," he began. "Saved most of what I made, been careful with it. I have got about $2,500 in the bank in Carson City. Was planning to use it to start my own spread someday, find some land, build something lasting." Katherine stared at him, not understanding where this was going. "But standing in that bank today, seeing you come out with that look on your face, seeing that Pettigrew look so pleased with himself," Liam continued, "something in me just rebelled against it. Then riding out here with you, hearing your story, seeing this place." He gestured around the room. "This is what I have been dreaming of. Not just land and cattle, but a real home. A place with roots and history and love in its walls." "Mr. Xander, I do not understand," Katherine said slowly. Liam took a deep breath. "I am asking you to marry me, Miss Daniels. I will pay off your mortgage as a wedding gift. The ranch stays yours, legally yours if you want it that way. We can draw up papers with a lawyer. But I get to stay here, work the land with you, help build it back up. We can start as partners, business partners, if that is all you want. I will not pressure you for more, but maybe over time we could build something real together." The room was utterly silent except for the ticking of the clock on the mantel. Katherine felt as though she had been struck by lightning. "You are offering to marry me, a woman you just met." "To give me $2,000. 2,500, Liam corrected. "Figure you will need the extra to get through the winter, buy feed, replace those cattle you lost." "But why?" Katherine whispered. "This is insane." Liam met her eyes directly. "Because sometimes you just know," he said simply. "Because I have been drifting for 5 years looking for a place to belong, and when I saw you standing outside that bank, something in me recognized something in you. Because this ranch is worth saving and you are worth saving it for. Because that Pettigrew needs to learn he cannot have everything he wants just because he has got money and power." He paused. "And because when you looked at me on that street, even for just that second, I felt something I have not felt in a long time. Hope, maybe, possibility." Katherine's mind was reeling. It was crazy. It was impossible. You did not marry strangers, did not accept money from men you had known for 3 hours. It went against everything she had been raised to believe about propriety and proper courtship and rational behavior. But then again, she had never imagined she would be standing in her childhood home on Christmas Eve being threatened with eviction by a banker who wanted to own her like property. "What do you think?" she asked Thomas, needing someone else to weigh in on this madness. Her brother looked at Liam with the shrewd assessment of someone who had grown up fast in the last year. "I think," Thomas said slowly, "that Mr. Xander could have just ridden on and not gotten involved. I think he did not have to come back here with this offer. I think anyone who wants to help us this much cannot be all bad." He paused. "But it is your choice, Katie. It has to be." Katherine turned back to Liam. "You said we could start as partners. You meant that. You are not expecting—" She could not finish the sentence, but he understood. "I meant it," Liam said firmly. "There is a small room off the barn my foreman used to use back when I had a spread. I can sleep there until you decide you want different. If you ever do. No pressure. No obligations beyond what you choose to give. And if I never want different." Katherine had to ask, "If I take your money and keep you at arm's length forever?" Liam smiled, a real smile that transformed his serious face. "Then I will die a lonely old man with a beautiful ranch and the satisfaction of knowing I did the right thing. But I am hoping you will at least give me a chance to earn more than that." Katherine closed her eyes, trying to think clearly. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was insane, that you did not bind your life to a stranger's on a few hours' acquaintance. But the deeper part of her, the part that had felt that jolt of connection when their eyes met, the part that had felt inexplicably safe riding through the storm beside him, was whispering something different. She opened her eyes and looked at the clock. 6:15. "We would have to leave now," she said slowly. "Find a minister, get to the bank before 6. Liam's eyes lit with hope, but he kept his voice measured. "Reverend Thompson lives 2 streets from the bank. He married my cousin last year. Good man, he will do it." "This is insane," Katherine said, but she was already reaching for her cloak. "Probably," Liam agreed. "But sometimes the best things are." The ride back to town was frantic, the 3 of them pushing the horses hard through the snow. Katherine's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She was going to marry a stranger. She was going to stand in a church and promise to love and honor a man whose middle name she did not even know. But as they raced through the gathering darkness, she kept stealing glances at Liam's profile, at the determined set of his jaw and the strength in his hands as he controlled his horse, and the panic began to give way to something else. Not calm, exactly, but a kind of fierce rightness. They reached Reverend Thompson's house at 10 minutes to 6. The minister opened the door in his shirt sleeves, clearly in the middle of his own Christmas Eve preparations, and stared at the 3 snow-covered figures on his porch. Liam explained quickly, his words tumbling over each other. Katherine expected the Reverend to refuse, to tell them to come back after proper bans had been posted and appropriate time had passed. Instead, Reverend Thompson looked at Katherine with kind eyes and asked, "Is this what you want, child?" "Yes," Katherine heard herself say and realized it was true. "Then give me 2 minutes to get my coat and my wife. Cannot have a wedding without a witness." 5 minutes later, they stood in the Reverend's small parlor before a fire burning cheerfully in the hearth. Mrs. Thompson had hastily arranged some holly branches on the mantel, and someone had lit candles. The Reverend held his Bible, and Thomas stood to one side with Mrs. Thompson, both of them serving as witnesses. "Dearly beloved," Reverend Thompson began, and Katherine felt Liam take her hand. His hand was warm and calloused from years of hard work, and it completely engulfed hers. She looked up at him, this stranger who was about to become her husband, and found him looking back at her with an expression of such open honesty that it took her breath away. Whatever else this was, it was not a trick or a game. He meant every word he had said. The ceremony was short, the words familiar from other weddings Katherine had attended, but they felt entirely new when applied to herself. When Reverend Thompson said, "You may kiss the bride," Liam leaned down and pressed a gentle, chaste kiss to her lips. It lasted barely a second, but Katherine felt heat flood through her at the contact. "Now sign here," Reverend Thompson said, producing a marriage certificate. They both signed. Thomas and Mrs. Thompson added their signatures as witnesses, and just like that, Katherine Daniels became Katherine Xander. She stared at the name on the certificate, unable to quite believe it was real. "We have got 4 minutes," Liam said, consulting his pocket watch. "Let us go prove to that banker that he does not win today." They burst into the bank at 2 minutes before 6 o'clock. Pettigrew was putting on his coat, clearly preparing to leave, and his face registered shock when he saw them. "Well," he said with a sneer, "come to beg for one more night." "I suppose I could. We came to make the payment," Katherine interrupted, and the look on Pettigrew's face was worth every moment of panic and uncertainty from the last hour. "Payment," Pettigrew repeated. "You do not have $2,000. "No," Liam said, stepping forward, "but I do. And Miss Daniels is now Mrs. Xander, so her debts are my debts. We are paying off the mortgage in full. That is the payoff amount, correct? $2,000. Pettigrew's face went through several interesting color changes. "You cannot," he sputtered. "That is, where would you get that kind of money?" "That is none of your concern," Liam said coldly. "Just do the paperwork, and make it fast. I want this done tonight." For a moment, Katherine thought Pettigrew might refuse out of pure spite. But banking was banking, and Liam was offering cash money. Pettigrew could not legally refuse to accept payment and clear the debt. With obvious reluctance, Pettigrew pulled the ledgers back out and began the paperwork. Liam rode back to the telegraph office and sent a wire to his bank in Carson City, arranging for a certified bank draft. It took over an hour, but finally, the telegraph operator confirmed the funds and issued the draft. Liam brought it back to the bank, where Pettigrew was forced to mark the mortgage as paid in full and hand over the deed. Katherine held the deed in shaking hands, staring at the words "paid in full" stamped across the top. It was done. The ranch was safe. She turned to Liam, this man who was now legally her husband, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "I do not know how to thank you." "You already did," Liam said softly. "You married me." They rode back to the ranch through clear darkness, the storm having blown itself out. Stars blazed overhead in a sky so black and deep, it seemed infinite. Katherine rode between Liam and Thomas, her mind still spinning with everything that had happened. She had woken up this morning facing eviction and ruin. She was going to bed tonight married to a man she barely knew, but who had saved everything she loved. When they reached the house, Thomas immediately excused himself and went to his room, clearly exhausted by the emotional roller coaster of the day. That left Katherine and Liam alone in the parlor, suddenly awkward with each other now that the crisis had passed. "I should show you where you will sleep," Katherine said finally. "You mentioned the foreman's room." "That will be fine," Liam assured her. Katherine led him through the kitchen to the enclosed passage that connected the house to the barn. There was indeed a small room there, barely more than a shed, with a narrow cot and a single window. It was freezing cold. "This will not do," Katherine said immediately. "You will freeze. There is no stove, no heat." "I have slept in worse," Liam said, but his breath was fogging in the air. Katherine made a decision. "There is a spare room upstairs. It is small, but it has a fireplace. You will sleep there." Katherine, I do not want to make you uncomfortable in your own home. You just gave up your life savings for me, Katherine said firmly. The least I can do is give you a warm bed. Come on. She led him upstairs and showed him to the room that had been her father's study. There was a narrow bed against one wall, a desk and chair, and shelves lined with books. She lit the fire that Thomas had laid earlier and showed Liam where the extra blankets were kept. It is not fancy, but it is warm, she said. It is perfect, Liam said, looking around with genuine appreciation. Thank you. They stood there for a moment, and Katherine became acutely aware that this was her wedding night. Under normal circumstances, there would be expectations, traditions. But nothing about this situation was normal. I should let you rest, she said quickly. It has been a long day. Katherine, Liam said as she turned to leave. I meant what I said earlier about being partners first, about giving you time and space. I know this happened fast. I know you need to process it all. I know, Katherine said softly, and I appreciate it more than I can say. But Liam, I am glad you came to Elko today. I am glad you stopped me on the road. I am glad you came back with that crazy offer. Liam smiled, that transformative smile that made him look younger and more carefree. I am glad too. Merry Christmas, Katherine. Merry Christmas, Liam. Katherine lay in her bed that night, staring at the ceiling and listening to the house settle around her. In the room down the hall, her husband was sleeping. Her husband. The word felt foreign in her mind, but not wrong, just strange and new. She thought about the way he had looked at Pettigrew, with cold contempt for a bully. The way he had been gentle with the horses. The way he had included Thomas in the conversation, treating him as a man rather than a child. The way his hand had felt holding hers during the ceremony. It was not love, not yet, but it was something. And maybe that something could grow into more. Morning came cold and bright, Christmas Day with sun sparkling off fresh snow. Katherine rose and dressed quickly, suddenly nervous about facing Liam in the daylight. What did you say to a man who was both a stranger and your husband? But when she came downstairs, she found Liam already in the kitchen with Thomas, the two of them laughing over something as they cooked breakfast. Liam had found her father's old apron and tied it around his waist, and he was frying bacon while Thomas worked on biscuits. Morning, Liam said when he saw her, his smile easy and natural. Hope you do not mind us raiding your kitchen. Figured you could use a morning to sleep in. I do not mind at all, Katherine said, touched by the gesture. It smells wonderful. They ate together at the kitchen table, and Katherine found herself relaxing into the conversation. Liam told them about growing up on a small farm near Carson City, about losing his own parents to fever when he was 19, about deciding to try trailing cattle because he needed work and adventure both. He spoke easily, but Katherine noticed what he did not say. He had been alone for a long time, just as she had. He understood what it meant to lose the people you loved. After breakfast, Thomas announced he was going to ride out and check on the cattle in the near pasture. It was clearly an excuse to give them privacy, and Katherine was both grateful and terrified when he left. Want to show me around the ranch? Liam asked. Help me understand what I just bought into. They bundled up and walked the property together, Katherine pointing out the different pastures, the creek that ran along the southern boundary, the hay barn and the equipment shed. Liam asked intelligent questions about the herd size, the grazing rotation, the water sources. He clearly knew ranching inside and out. Your father built something good here, Liam said as they stood on a small rise looking over the land. I can see why you fought so hard to keep it. He loved this place, Katherine said softly. Both my parents did. They met in Missouri and came west together after they married. Started with nothing but a wagon and a dream. Built all this from scratch. That is what I want to do, Liam said. "What I have always wanted, to build something that lasts, something that matters. Something I can pass down to my children someday." He said it casually, but Katherine felt her cheeks warm. Children. They were married now. Eventually, that would be a possibility, if they wanted it, if this strange partnership developed into something more. "I should warn you," Katherine said, changing the subject, "I am not the easiest person to live with. I am stubborn and opinionated. I like things done a certain way. I do not take direction well." Liam laughed. "I noticed, but that is all right. I am pretty stubborn myself." "We will probably fight about things." "Probably," Katherine agreed. "But we will figure it out," Liam said confidently, "because we are both reasonable people who want the same thing, this ranch to thrive. That is enough to start with." They walked back to the house in comfortable silence. Over the next few days, they fell into a routine. Liam was up before dawn, doing chores before Katherine even woke. They ate breakfast together, worked through the day, ate dinner as a family with Thomas. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and talked, learning about each other in bits and pieces. Katherine learned that Liam loved to raid, that he had a dry sense of humor, that he was patient with the animals but had a fierce temper when it came to injustice. Liam learned that Katherine could outcook anyone he had ever met, that she had a gift for understanding horses, that she sang to herself when she was happy. New Year's came and went. January turned to February. The snow melted slowly, revealing dead grass and muddy earth. Liam took stock of the ranch's finances and made careful plans for the spring. He suggested they invest in a new bull to improve the herd, and Katherine agreed. He asked her opinion on every decision, treated her as a true partner. And somewhere in those cold winter weeks, Katherine realized she was happy. More than that, she was falling in love with her husband. It was small things that made her realize it. The way her heart lifted when she heard his boots on the porch. The way she found herself watching him work, admiring the strength in his shoulders and the competence of his hands. The way his rare smiles made her feel warm all over. The way she had started thinking of him not as Liam Xander, the stranger who had saved her ranch, but as Liam, her husband, her partner, her friend. But she did not know how to tell him. He had been so scrupulous about keeping his distance, sleeping in the spare room, never pushing for more than she offered. What if she had misread things? What if he had meant it when he said they could stay business partners forever? It was mid-February when everything changed. They had gone into town for supplies, and Katherine was in the general store when she overheard two women talking. "Did you hear about Katherine Daniels? Married some drifter cowboy she barely knew. Probably trapped him, poor man. Pretty girl, but everyone knows her family was going under. He must not have known what he was getting into." Katherine's cheeks burned, but before she could say anything, Liam appeared at her elbow. He had clearly heard too, because his face was set in hard lines. "Excuse me, ladies," he said, his voice cold and sharp. "But that is my wife you are talking about, and I will thank you to keep her name out of your mouths unless you have something kind to say." The women gasped, scandalized. "Well, I never good day," Liam said firmly, taking Katherine's arm and guiding her out of the store. They loaded their supplies in silence, and it was not until they were on the road home that Katherine finally spoke. "You did not have to do that. People are going to talk. Let them." "No," Liam said forcefully. "I will not let them talk about you that way. You did not trap me, I offered. I wanted to marry you. I still want to be married to you." Something in his tone made Katherine's pulse quicken. "You do?" Liam pulled the wagon to a stop and turned to face her fully. "Katherine, I know we agreed to start as partners. I know I said I would not push. But I have to tell you, I am not sure how much longer I can keep pretending this is just a business arrangement." "What do you mean?" Katherine whispered, afraid to hope. I mean, I am in love with you, Liam said bluntly. Have been for weeks now, maybe since that first day if I am being honest. I love the way you hum when you are cooking. I love how fiercely you protect the things you care about. I love your stubbornness and your strength, and the way you look at me sometimes when you think I am not paying attention. I love you, Katherine. And if you do not feel the same way, I will respect that. I will keep my distance. But I could not let those women say those things without setting the record straight. You are not some desperate woman who trapped me. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. Katherine felt tears streaming down her face, but for once they were happy tears. You love me, completely, Liam said. Entirely, forever if you will have me. Oh, thank God, Katherine breathed, because I love you too. I have been so afraid to say it, afraid you would think I was just grateful for what you did, but it is more than that, so much more. I love you, Liam Xander. I love your kindness and your strength. I love how you treat Thomas like a brother. I love how you smell like horse and leather and hay. I love the way you look at me like I am something precious. I love you. Liam made a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and pulled her into his arms. This kiss was nothing like the chaste peck in the reverend's parlor. This kiss was deep and passionate and full of weeks of pent-up longing. Katherine kissed him back with everything she had, pouring all her love and desire and gratitude into the contact. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Liam rested his forehead against hers. "Can I move out of the spare room?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Katherine laughed, giddy with happiness. "I was hoping you would ask that." That night, for the first time since their wedding, they shared a bed. Liam was gentle and patient, treating Katherine like she was made of spun glass. She showed him with actions what she could not quite put into words, that she wanted this, wanted him, wanted the full marriage they had both been too afraid to reach for. Afterwards, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, Katherine felt a peace she had not known since her parents died. She was not alone anymore. She had a partner, a husband, a man who loved her not for her property or her looks but for herself. "What are you thinking about?" Liam asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That this is the best Christmas gift I have ever received," Katherine said. "Even though you gave it to me in February." Liam laughed, the sound rumbling in his chest. "Better late than never." "Thank you," Katherine said seriously, "for everything, for believing in me, for saving the ranch, for being patient, for loving me." "You do not have to thank me," Liam said, kissing the top of her head. "Loving you is the easiest thing I have ever done." Spring came, and with it new life. The grass turned green, the cattle grew fat on good pasture, and Katherine discovered she was pregnant. She told Liam one morning in May, and the look of wonder and joy on his face was something she knew she would remember for the rest of her life. A baby. He whispered, his hand going to her still flat stomach. "We are having a baby, we are," Katherine confirmed, laughing at his stunned expression. Liam let out a whoop of pure joy and spun her around the kitchen, then set her down quickly, worried he might hurt her. Katherine laughed and kissed him, her heart so full she thought it might burst. Their son was born in January of 1877, exactly 1 year after their wedding. They named him Michael, and he had his father's gray-green eyes and his mother's stubborn chin. Liam cried when he held his son for the first time, and Katherine knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Thomas married a girl from town the following year, a sweet-natured brunette named Sarah who loved ranching as much as he did. They built a house on the eastern portion of the property, and the two families worked the land together. The Daniels Xander Ranch prospered under their combined efforts, growing from 200 acres to 500 over the next decade. Katherine and Liam had 3 more children, 2 daughters and another son. The house that had once echoed with loneliness filled with laughter and life. They built an addition to accommodate the growing family, and every Christmas they told the children the story of how their parents met on Christmas Eve, how a cowboy had paid a mortgage as a wedding gift and saved not just a ranch but a family. Cornelius Pettigrew left Elko a few years later, his banking practices having finally caught up with him. He tried to cheat the wrong person, someone with enough money and influence to fight back, and found himself facing fraud charges. The last Katherine heard, he was working as a clerk in San Francisco, his power and influence gone. On their 10th anniversary, Liam surprised Katherine with a new deed. He had it redrawn to put the ranch entirely in her name, just as he had originally promised. "I know I said it would be yours legally," he told her. "I want to make sure that is true. This is your family's land, your legacy." Katherine took the deed, looked at it for a long moment, and then tore it in half. Liam gaped at her in shock. "What are you doing?" he asked. "We are going to have new papers drawn up," Katherine said firmly, "putting the ranch in both our names, equal partners, because that is what we are, Liam, partners. This is not my ranch or your ranch, it is ours, everything we have built together." Liam pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply. "Have I told you lately that I love you?" "Not in the last 5 minutes," Katherine teased. "Better remedy that." "I love you, Katherine Xander," Liam said, his eyes shining with emotion. "I loved you when you were a desperate woman outside a bank, and I loved you when you became my wife, and I will love you when we are old and gray and surrounded by grandchildren. You are the best decision I ever made." "We are the best decision we ever made," Katherine corrected. "Because you chose me, but I chose you too. We chose each other and we chose this life, and I would make the same choice again in a heartbeat." They drew up new papers putting the ranch in both names. The Xander Ranch, as it came to be known, became one of the most successful operations in northern Nevada. But its success was not measured just in cattle or land or money. It was measured in the love that filled every corner of the property, in the children who grew up learning the value of hard work and compassion, in the legacy of 2 people who took a chance on each other when the world said they were crazy. Years later, when their grandchildren would ask how Grandma and Grandpa met, Katherine and Liam would exchange a look full of shared memories and deep love. Then they would tell the story together, interrupting each other and laughing at remembered details. And the children would listen with wide eyes to the tale of a banker who tried to foreclose on Christmas Eve, and a cowboy who paid the mortgage as a wedding gift, and 2 lonely people who found in each other everything they had been searching for. Katherine never forgot that moment outside the bank, the hopelessness she had felt, the desperation. But she also never forgot the moment Liam appeared, riding through the snow like something out of a storybook, bringing with him not just money but hope and kindness, and eventually love. He had saved more than her ranch that day. He had saved her future, her dreams, her heart, and in the end, that was the greatest gift of all. On their 50th wedding anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren and even a few great-grandchildren, Liam took Katherine's weathered hand in his own and kissed it gently. They sat together on the porch of the house they had built and rebuilt and expanded over the years, looking out over land they had worked with their own hands. "Would you do it again?" Liam asked softly. "If you could go back, knowing everything that would happen, would you still marry a stranger on Christmas Eve?" Katherine looked at the man beside her, his hair silver now but his eyes still the same gray-green that had captivated her so long ago. She thought about all the years between then and now, the struggles and triumphs, the births and deaths, the ordinary moments of extraordinary love. "In a heartbeat," she said. Every single time. You are my Christmas miracle, Liam Xander, then, now, and always. Liam smiled and pulled her close, and they sat together watching the sun set over their land, their legacy, their love. The ranch that had almost been lost on a snowy Christmas Eve had become a testament to the power of taking chances, of believing in possibilities, of choosing love even when logic said it was impossible. And if sometimes Katherine looked up at the winter stars and thought about that desperate girl standing outside a bank with no hope left, she would remember that sometimes hope appears when you least expect it, in the form of a cowboy riding through the snow, ready to bet everything on a stranger with sad eyes and a brave heart. That was the story. That was their story. And it was the truest, most beautiful story Katherine had ever known, because every word of it was real, and every moment of it had been worth the leap of faith it took to begin it. The ranch stood strong for generations, a monument not just to land and cattle, but to the enduring power of love freely given and gratefully received, of partnership built on trust and deepened through the years, of two souls who found each other on the darkest night and chose to walk together into the light.